Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Before I get started, I wanted to say the following. I do have quite a few videos planned and in progress. I am currently recording and editing them. I am one of those people that if I am recording a video that'll take multiple days to record, I record and edit at the same time so that by the time I'm done recording, I don't have that much more to edit. I do have a couple of videos that have been taking multiple days to record. Those videos are currently in progress. The second thing is that I do have some of my videos in July scheduled for publishing, specifically the ones at the beginning of July, and I do have like a kind of time frame for when I'll schedule and upload certain videos in July specifically because I am attending Anime Expo 2023 this year. I have a whole playlist set up for my Anime Expo 2023 videos because I plan to do a whole kind of mini series, so to say, on Anime Expo 2023. But with all that said, let's get into this video. This is what I'm calling my warm spring recommendations. And what I mean by that is that these are books that I would recommend during spring once it starts getting warmer, during that transition period between spring and summer. First up is Go the Distance by Jen Kalanita. This is part of the Disney Twisted Tales series, and this is a really great, easy read. The Disney Hercules movie and this book are both very summery, but it's kind of that beginning of summer feel where you just got out of spring and or you're just finishing up spring, and you need something that's kind of on that edge of not quite summer, but summer. Premise of this book is what if Meg needed to become a god to be with Hercules, and Meg is sent on this quest to save the wife of her former lover, the same lover who she sacrificed her soul to Hades for to save this lover from the underworld, who then went off to be with another woman who is that wife that Meg is trying to save. I hesitated sharing that part, but that part is in the description of the book, so it's not really a spoiler. Second off is Death on the Nile. Now this is a very summery book based on placements. It's in Egypt, it's on the Nile River, so it's a very summery book location wise, but the fact that there is this murder mystery on the boat that all these people are on, including Poirot, that kind of dampens the summery feel a little bit, so it's that great transition into summer from spring, in my opinion. That combination of summery location plus a kind of depressing mood because of the murder mystery, I think that makes it a great spring to summer read. And the murder mystery basically starts off with the death of a young woman who is very wealthy, Lynette Ridgway. She's found shot in the head in her bed. Next up is Independence by Chicho Banerjee Divakaruni. This is, again, a book that has a setting that's very summer-like, but again, it's the atmosphere of the people, the political atmosphere, the romantic atmosphere too, that kind of puts a damper on the overall feelings that one normally gets during summer. So this is another very good read for that transitional period. And this book is basically about three sisters in 1947 India, basically trying to navigate their way through India gaining its independence from Britain. Next up is the These Violent Delights duology. The first book is These Violent Delights, and the second book is Our Violent Ends. This is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. The original play itself, Romeo and Juliet, has always been a very spring-esque play for me, and it kind of sits at the end of spring, but it's not quite at the transitional period. But These Violent Delights is, as I said, a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, but this is set in 1926 Shanghai. That combination of a very summery setting, along with being a Romeo and Juliet retelling, really makes it a good book for this transitional period. Also, I know I'm saying transitional period a lot, spring to summer a lot. I want to say sorry, but at the same time, I feel like I can't really explain it any other way, so we're gonna go with it. Next up is The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. If you've seen Disney's The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, Mr. Toad's short is based off of this book. And this is a very nice, easy read. It's very short. A lot of its settings are that spring to summer setting, both in the weather and just the looks of things. Some of the stories that are included in this about Mr. Toad, so I would highly recommend this one for spring to summer. Next up is the Six Crimson Cranes duology. The first book is Six Crimson Cranes, and the second book is The Dragon's Promise. If you have watched The Three Ravens from Jim Henson's The Storyteller, or you watched or read a variation of The Wild Swans, I personally have watched Mikhail Baryshnikov's Stories from My Childhood version of The Wild Swans, and this book is basically that story of The Three Ravens or The Wild Swans, whichever one you grew up with or have loved. This is basically that story, but set in an Asian-like country, and this time it's cranes. And our main character, Shiori, has magic which is forbidden in Kyoto, where she's from. And her stepmother, Raikama, banishes Shiori from Kyoto and turns her brothers into cranes, and then she has to go on this journey to restore her place in Kyoto and the Kyoton courts, and she is the only princess, and also turn her brothers back into human. And this duology is such a great transitional because it is that journey, and although there are most of the seasons within this duology, it is a really great read for spring and summer and for that transitional period. Next up is Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel. This is more so a read that's at the beginning of summer rather than the end of spring, but it is a beginning of summer read, so once spring is finishing up, this is a good book to start off with. Kaikeyi, the Princess of Kikaya, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but essentially her role has always been to become a wife, a mother, to serve the men around her, even though her and her brother were born on the same day under the same constellation, and being born with that constellation in the sky is very good fortune, and with her brother it was always bolstered up, but with her it didn't seem to help her, which kind of seemed double standard to Kaikeyi. After a while, she turns to these scrolls that she read with her mother, and she becomes a very fierce warrior and a capable warrior. However, from those scrolls, some chaos ensues, and she needs to decide what legacy she wants to leave behind. Next up is The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood by Howard Pyle. I don't think I need to explain this one too much given how well known the Robin Hood story is. Next up is Almost There. This is another Disney Twisted Tale book, but this one focuses on Tiana. For me, Princess and the Frog has always been a very spring and summer movie, so it's great for both seasons, and it's great for that transition from spring to summer. This book also has that vibe of being great for either spring or summer, or if you need something to help transition from spring to summer. And the premise for this Disney Twisted Tale is, what if Tiana had taken the deal with Dr. Facilier? Next up is Love and Luck. This is the second book in the Love and trilogy. There might be another name for this trilogy, but I'm not sure. It's an interconnected trilogy just for the fact that it's the name and the premise of all of these books, but these are standalones within the trilogy. You don't necessarily have to read the first book, Love and Gelato, to read this one, although you will see some Love and Gelato characters. And this book follows Addie, who has traveled to Ireland with her family for her aunt's destination wedding, and Addie and her brother Ian, who were once inseparable, have been at each other's throats recently. In the hotel room, Addie finds a guidebook, Ireland for the Heartbroken, and Addie goes on this whirlwind tour of Ireland to discover herself, figure out what love means to her, and just find herself in Ireland. This is a very sweet story, and I absolutely loved it. I feel like I need to reread it. When you have destination weddings, you often think of like summer, and Ireland definitely has a spring-summer feel, so this is a really great read for this period of time. Speaking of Ireland, the last book that I have in this recommendation video is A Treasure of Irish Fairy and Folktales. This is a leatherbound classic edition from Barnes & Noble, and I recommend this one, but I would recommend any and all Irish fairy and folktales because with Ireland being for the most part a very spring, summery country, reading about their fairy and folktales would be a great way to transition from spring to summer. Just as a side note, before I wrap up this video, I am reading Babel by R.F. Kuang, and I have a reading vlog in progress for this book. It's going to be a little while longer before I finish the reading vlog and get it uploaded, but I wanted to give a slight overview of my general thoughts of this book. Basically stuff I've already said in my reading vlog, and these thoughts basically cover books 1 and 2, parts 1 and 2 within Babel. This is a very interesting story, and I think it's a good critique on imperialism, on the British Empire, on colonialism. I think Kuang was trying to make this too much of a history-esque historical nonfiction book in the sense that we have footnotes, and in the sense that the writing is very lackluster, so to say, for something that is supposed to be fantasy. Yes, it's historical fiction, but it is also fantasy. It's a historical fantasy book, even though it's set in the real world at a real place. And there are too many footnotes in this book for a fiction book, and I go on about that in my reading vlog, so stay tuned for that video. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for my next video.